Okay. It's first thing in the morning, so I might be a little more out of it than I usually am because neither my green tea nor my medication has kicked in, so I might be a little more than I usually am. But I got some great news. I got a package. This is from FunDead Publications, and it is my contributor copies of One Night in Salem, which I decided I'm going to unbox for you guys, since I have a few minutes before I have to run off to my day job, aka moonlighting in grocery retail. But I had a feeling these were going to come today, perhaps because Amber Newbury, our wonderful editor, chief cook, bottle washer, and mastermind, was talking on Facebook Monday rather, that she was packing things up and sending them off. You know, the pre-orders and the author copies. Yay! I started calculating, okay, you know, that's coming from Salem. How long is it going to take for it to go from Salem to somewhere in the Miskatonic Valley? East Monuxet. If I mention an East Monuxet in one of my stories, I'm talking about my hometown. Because, to be honest, I feel just a little odd about naming my hometown. Maybe it's security reasons, okay? I love the box. Look at that. They get it in the camera range. There's a witch stamped on the back. I love that. That's one of their signatures. They have these little spooky stampos. Ooh! Wow! Wow. I've been admiring the cover since it came out, since she revealed it. And there it is. Oh. Wow. I love it. Ooh. Now, one copy is mine to add to my library of, hey, these are books that have stories of mine in it, and I have 2 spare copies, which I will be selling probably in Salem at our the New England Horror Writers book sale at the end of October this year. To be the 28th and the 29th. I'm gonna have to double check my calendar, but anyway, I'm gonna be selling those, and I will also be in Salem on October the 14th between the hours of 2 and 4 p.m. over at the Witch House in Salem. I will be there with Amber and some of the other fine folks from FunDead Publications, and we will be signing books. Oh my. She's getting snazzier with these books. She's started putting little vignette illustrations in there, and I've been... Ooh, I love that. Dedication for those who love Halloween above all else. Wow. So the great thing with this book is it's a kind of a time-traveling anthology. It's stories set in Salem on Halloween night, and it's across a whole slew of years, starting from, the first one is 1630, Lost Pages of Governor John Winthrop by Catherine Halecki, whom I've had the good fortune of meeting and talking with and getting to know. She's a very pleasant person, a history expert of sorts, and has helped me about with some of my historical stuff that I needed to figure out for things I was writing. Okay, it starts in 1630 and it ends with 2008 and 2017, a bullet hole in an alley wall on Gedney Street by Patrick Cooper. So, great thing about this is that it's all Halloween in Salem, and that's all different years, and in my case, my story is set in 1991. Huh. There we go. There we go. There I am. Witch that blew in on the storm. That's one of my favorite stories that I've written recently. It's Amber described it as a gothic tale. I was calling it urban fantasy with some horror elements, and it's about a lot of things. It's set in 1991, the year of the no-name hurricane, which is probably better known to people everywhere as the perfect storm, thanks to the book by Sebastian Junger, which eventually was made into a movie starring George Clooney and I think Mark Wahlberg, which was basically mostly about the people that were out on the ocean at the time of the no-name hurricane. So that's kind of gotten burned into everybody's mind. I personally like the phrase "the perfect storm" because that's what this hurricane sort of weather feature storm. It was a storm. Anyway, that hit the Halloween of 1991. It was like basically 3 days of wind and crazy rain and crazy wind and crazy rain and just apparently, there was a guy at the National Weather Service in Boston, office in Boston, around there. Can't talk because it's too early in the morning. Who was saying this was basically the perfect storm because what happened was the remains of, I believe it was Hurricane Francis, I believe it was called. Anyway, then the remains of a hurricane came up the East Coast and combined with a nor'easter, which just spun out into this massive, scary storm. There was actually, I've seen radar scans of it and whatnot, and there, in a few instances, there was a definite hurricane eye to this. So technically, this thing was a hurricane. The winds were fast enough. Part of it actually had been a hurricane. So, yeah, technically, they say if it had gotten a name, I think it would have been Hurricane Grace, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, with some G name, it would have had that designation because they had, every year they come up with a list of 26 names they're gonna have for all the hurricanes and use those names as they go along. And so technically this was considered a hurricane, but I don't know why it didn't get the designation, but around here it tends to get referred to by the old timers as the no-name hurricane because it didn't have a name technically. So in my story, it's obviously set on Halloween night in Salem, and it starts out with this news photographer who's looking for a big story to take pictures on because, he's been dumping around. It's rainy and windy, so the mayor and the chief of police have called off outdoor stuff for haunted happenings. If there's something indoors, you can still do it, but please stay off the streets, and you can't, unfortunately, have the fun stuff that happen on the town common because otherwise you will get drenched to the bone and your stuff will get blown around. So he's roaming around, he's looking for a story, and he gets his story. Problem is, this is the kind of story that he decides he can't really tell because this is very personal for one young woman and her niece who literally get blown in on the storm. I'm not going to say more because I want you to read it and find out why this witch gets blown in on the storm. This was quite a fun story to write. It actually started out based on a throwaway line in another story that I had written, Unconventional Witch, in which, pardon the pun, in that story, one of the characters says to another character who winds up being one of the main characters in Witch Who Blew In on the Storm, one of them says, "I took you in when you were blown in on the storm." And that line just kind of made me go, huh. There's a story behind that line, and I want to tell that story. So I kind of started tinkering with it, and basically it was just a random... Originally she was going to get blown in on a storm and fall onto a fishing boat that was going into Gloucester. And somehow that wasn't working. I think probably because I was thinking, okay, I've already written a story dealing with a fishing boat, and that's the Stranding off Scudic Point, which will be coming out later in October in Wicked Haunted from New England Horror Writers Press. And I decided, okay, we got to mix this up a little bit, have something different. So I just kind of started doodling and came up with my character, Carton Tillinghast, who's not native to Salem, but has kind of moved up there and works up there a lot. So he's kind of a transplant, but he's starting to get to know the ins and outs and whatnot, which is kind of a reflection of my relationship with Salem as an entity, because I live in the town south and west of Salem, further down in the Merrimack Valley, or the Miskatonic Valley, as I like to call it. And yeah, I spent a fair amount of time in Salem, and I found that I do have a connection there, as I've probably talked about, having an ancestor that lived there somewhat before the witch hysteria, or witch hunt, whichever way you wish to call it. Calling it the Salem witch trials just kind of validates it, gives it a certain dignity, when basically it was a series of kangaroo court cases. So anyway, um, so this is, wow, this is quite exciting, and this is wow. I don't exactly know about a loss for words here, but it's like, yay, this is great to wake up to, and this is I'm gonna have a good time reading the rest of the stories. But she's been sort of showcasing them through the month of October. You know, putting quotes and snippets and little bits about the authors of the different stories, and a lot of them would sound really woo, you know? It's gonna be quite fun to read and fun to see what else she got in there, so maybe I'll get a little reading in before I jet off to work, and in which case, it's been great talking to you, and I hope you enjoy the book, and I'll make sure to put a little link to where you can buy the book. I'll put it down in the doodly-doo, and yeah, it's great talking to you, and you folks keep it creepy.